What's up everyone and welcome. In this episode we're going to talk about brute force attacks against RDP, the remote desktop protocol.
Oh, drat these computers. They're so naughty and so complex. I could pinch them.
Computer networks are being aggressively bombarded with billions of password guessing attacks as cybercriminals attempt to exploit the growth in remote desktop protocol, or RDP, and other cloud services in corporate environments. Cybersecurity researchers at ESET detected 55 billion new attempts to brute force attacks between May and August 2021 alone, more than double the 27 billion attacks detected between January and April. That's a total of 82 billion attacks from January until August 2021. Successfully guessing passwords can provide cybercriminals with an easy route into networks and an avenue they can use to launch further attacks, including delivering ransomware or other malware. Once in a network, they'll attempt to use that access to gain additional permissions and manipulate the network, performing actions like turning off security services so they can go about their activities more easily. One of the most popular attacks for brute force password guessing attacks are the RDP services. The rise in remote working has led to an increase in people needing to use remote desktop services. Many of these are public-facing services, providing cybercriminals with an opportunity to break into networks, and it's an opportunity they're eager to exploit.
After all, I am smart as a fox, you know. Deucedly clever of me, don't you think?
The sheer number of attacks means most will be automated, but if accounts are secured with simple to guess or common passwords, and many are, then they can make easy pickings for attackers. Once a password has been successfully breached, it's likely an attacker will take a more hands-on approach to reach their goal. With the number of attacks being in the billions, this is impossible to do manually, so these attack attempts are automated. Of course, there's always a manual aspect when cybercriminals are setting up or adjusting the attack infrastructure and specifying what types of targets are in their crosshairs. Andrei Kubajic, security awareness specialist at ESET, told ZDNet. In addition to targeting RDP services, cybercriminals are also going after public-facing SQL and SMB services. These services will often be secured with default passwords that attackers can take advantage of. One of the reasons why brute force attacks are successful is because many accounts are secured with simple, one-word passwords. Requiring passwords to be more complex could go a long way to preventing the accounts from being breached in brute force attacks. The National Cybersecurity Center suggests users use 3 memorable passwords as a password, something that's far more robust against brute force attacks than a single word. Organizations can also provide an additional layer of protection against brute force password guessing attacks and other campaigns. By deploying multi-factor authentication, using MFA means that even if the attackers know the correct password, there's an extra barrier to prevent them from automatically being able to access the network.
All right, you wolf.
All right, sheep herder. Good joke, man. How's this thing work?
Like this.
Good joke, man.
So, what did we learn? Well, if we're talking about SQL databases, number one, my policy is they should never be public-facing. They should be behind a firewall. And that's if direct SQL access is required by a website. If you're talking about APIs, then maybe there are some specifications which don't allow that. But in general, a database server should be in a private network behind a firewall and not directly accessible. If you're talking about other services, we need to increase the security that we use surrounding access. We need to improve it for all entry points into our networks and our systems. RDP, SSH, PC Anywhere, or any other remote control software used to access a server or a computer or another device remotely, it's an attack vector that is being actively exploited. We're talking 82 billion attempts that were logged from January to August 2021. Now we can improve the security by, like the article says, improving our password complexity, Also trying to implement multi-factor authentication where applicable. But we could also use our firewall to block and only allow specific IP addresses access. And this could be a process where a user requests to gain access from their home network, and hopefully they have a static IP address, and that IP address can be added to the firewall. Or even dynamic IP addresses, you could still have the same process. Now, it is lengthy, and if you have thousands of employees, yes, it's a timely process, but even that could be automated. The point is putting a security layer of the firewall in front of those ports for RDP or for SSH to only allow specific IP addresses, approved specific IP addresses or IP ranges, to gain access to that. Or better yet, adding a second level to the firewall level where we implement an on-off mechanism to enable and disable those services. You don't need RDP on all the time. So if you can implement an on-off mechanism so that it can be triggered to be on at a specific time or when needed upon some type of request, then we have a firewall security mechanism in place. You have your multi-factor authentication where possible. You also have your strong password encryptions, and then we have a mostly off security policy in place, which is what we try to do for all services like SSH and RDP. We try to have it off when it's not needed. It doesn't need to be sitting there on just waiting until we need it. We have a mechanism in place where we can trigger that to be enabled from remotely through different channels, so that it only gets turned on when it's needed by a developer or a system admin or an employee. So with that, I say thanks for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe if you haven't already, and smash the bell if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.